Hey y'all, it's Leanne. Just surfing through my thoughts about this conversation today, and what it is that I really feel inclined or compelled to say, and why I would be compelled to say it. So it's been an interesting journey. I'll start there. You know, as a child, we won't even get into it. It was so chaotic. I didn't know which end was up. And that makes complete sense to me now that I know myself better or have honored my experience more. But then in my early 30s, I wound up in a circumstance where I was seeing a shaman once a week. And I didn't even know what a shaman was. And it happened after I'd had a severe blow to my head that actually turned out to have broken one of my vertebrae, but we didn't have that confirmed until about 5 years ago. So I broke my neck essentially and didn't even go to a doctor other than the shaman. And in those experiences with her, I began to understand some things about myself. Not that I understood what to do with them, but I understood things that I didn't know I understood. And one of the biggest things, well, there were a lot of big things, lots and lots, and have continued to be over the years, that I've applied to my work and been able to help others experience themselves differently once they understand what's going on and they take themselves out of linear time frames and allow themselves to really experience their soul, or the essence, their truest essence. So anyway, when I was working with the shaman, one thing in particular happened that sticks with me about what I want to talk about today. And it came on the heels of something else happening. First, I had an encounter with what I'll call Christ consciousness. And growing up in the South, and actually in the Bible Belt of Northwest Florida, there was not very much leniency about how you were to interpret what the religion of Christianity was about. And I often found myself kind of turned off, but that wasn't even old enough to call it that. I just started asking questions. And when I was 11, I wrote down in a journal, if I could just remember what I already know, I'll be all right. And that was the same year that my neighbor, taking us to church for the after church program on Sunday night for the early teens, pulled over in the car and pulled me out by one ear and said whatever I had just said in the car with 9 other teenagers in a station wagon, crammed into a station wagon, was the devil talking through me. And that I needed to get on my knees and I needed to beg Jesus right then and there to save me, but it was probably too late because if I'd asked that question, only the devil would have thought to ask it. So good luck getting Jesus to help you now, but you better beg. And it scared the living shit out of me. Twofold. Number one, what it did was immediately set me up to question my own thoughts and to think that my thoughts had been hijacked. And number two, it built a bigger chasm between myself and this person called Jesus, because I did not understand a God that would have you have to pass through this intermediary and get permission to actually be loved by God or be accepted by God and into the realm of heaven or whatever they call it now. And so, meanwhile, anytime I felt that resentment or that rebelliousness, I would also then wonder if the devil really had my thoughts. So it was some fucked up little mess, to say the least. But as time went on and I got into my early 30s, I was with the shaman. And so one of the things that happened was one day she said, Leanne, do you see anything? And I said, I do. My eyes were closed, of course. I'm sitting on her floor in her basement in Dunwoody, Georgia. And she said, is it a person? And I said, yes. And she said, do you know who it is? And I said, yes. And she said, who is it? And I was like, well, it's Jesus. And she goes, Christ is here. And I said, yep. And she said, do you know what he wants? And I said, yep. I haven't opened my eyes. And she goes, what does he want? And I said, he wants to hug me. And she said, he wants to hug you? And I go, yep. I could care less, by the way. I was not going to give this an inch. And she said, what's he doing? Is he still here? And I said, yes, he's hugging me. And she said, Christ is hugging you. And I said, yeah. And she said, okay. And a few moments went by and she goes, is he still here? And I go, yep. And she said, what's going on? And all I all I did was go shh and blocked her out. And I don't remember anything else about her being there. I just remember there was a vibration of an energy in front of me. I knew exactly who and what it was. And the vibration came in very, very close and imprinted the sound of this voice that was the most pure, clear, unconditional, loving voice. There's nothing that I've ever compared to it that I've heard in my entire life. And vibrated this voice with me, looking right at me and said, I would never have imposed myself upon you. Now, if there was anything in the world or in this earthly experience that would have made me pay attention or listen up to something Jesus had to say or Christ had to say, that's what happened. Pardon me, that's what happened. And I remember looking at him, and then there was so much love, and love is a stupid word if we use it in the terms that we're used to. There was so much unconditional presence in front of me that I realized in that split second, I could never ever do anything wrong in the vibration of love that was being transmitted to me. I was born pure and whole, and I was pure and whole. But that's a lot of rhetoric that didn't go on. It was just this knowing. And then this being got down on his knees without me remembering or knowing anything about Maundy, Thursday, or what the Bible says. And he washed my feet. And I remember looking at him as he washed my feet, looking down as he washed my feet. And when he looked up, there was white light in his eyes. And that white light came into my eyes and went back into his, it went back and forth. And he vibrated, this voice again was so clear, and it said, we are the same. And I just felt so absolutely, the path is so wide you can't fall off. Like there was nothing that I could figure out to do that was so wrong that I wouldn't be deserving or loved by this being or whatever this being represented. And then I don't really remember how it ended on that one. There were some more pieces to it, and I won't go into it because it needs to be followed up with the next thing that came out of that. Number one, when I left there, my children were babies, literally little, very little. They were at not even preschool. They were at the nursery at the Presbyterian Church in Alpharetta, Georgia, while I was there, and with the shaman. And so I left there, and when I walked out, I remember thinking, I will never take my children to church again. And it wasn't an anti-Christ experience. It was, I finally know that whatever that was and that being is, I know that being, and I know that being very, very well, and I trust that being completely. What I knew right then was I also did not trust the church at all, and how humans were taking a narrative that somehow was so pure and absolutely convoluting it and turning it into this abstract dynamic that did not make any sense. So I left there knowing that I would continue to go to celebrate things for my families and my friends out of respect for any religion, actually, that is trying to be love-based, but I would not put my children through what I went through. They would have to make decisions as they moved into their adult world, which they're doing now. So with that said, I just want to briefly take 2 seconds to go, or just a moment later to go, a week or two later while I was with Julie, the woman that was my shaman, I then had another experience, and I can't remember what preceded it, but I know I went to a space, I traveled through, felt like I've traveled through galaxies for felt like a long time. It was probably only like 3 or 4 minutes, but it was just a very, 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 very deep level of space that I went through, and I could see planets and galaxies and stars going past me, which is a familiar thing now, but at the time it was not. And when I completed wherever I landed, I was there, and there were all these beings there. And I want to say beings because I don't like to call everything human when we're not necessarily in the earth plane, but all of these people that I knew were there. And I mean, there had to have been, I don't know, 1,000 people. I don't know, 500, 600,000, I don't know. It was just so far back. It was a huge crowd. What I did realize was that many of the ones in the front were people that had lived and already passed on in my life. And they were all there, and they were all so happy to see me. And then beyond them were people that were jumping up and down and waving and clapping. There was just such joy in the room. And I also remember there was this one person, I still don't know who that person is, that I saw them, and I keep thinking of it in terms of a male, but I saw this person and I was just like, oh my God, where have you been? Where have you been? I have missed you so badly. And I remember us hugging and me weeping. And then that piece got tied up, and I came out of that experience. When I moved back into my physical body, the first thing I said to Julie was, oh my God, our communication here is so archaic. And she said, what do you mean? I said, there's no need for all this emotional drama and language that we're trying to get across, and people taking things the wrong way. It was so crazy. It's like, oh, we already know how, this is already imprinted information. There's nobody's hiding anything when I'm traveling into these other experiences. And so fast forward, recently I had the experience of watching a friend of mine come out of her body at hospice and move out. And it was amazing to watch her do it. I didn't know that was going to happen, but it was fascinating, and that's a story for another time. And then 2 days ago, after I told that story at a recent event, a woman walked up to me and told me that she knew of some emergency room doctors who said they've seen some stuff like what I brought up, and that literally some people will come up out of their bodies and light coming out of their eyes. And I said, I've been seeing that for 25, 30 years on my table while people are still alive. They'll get up out of their bodies and do the work. And then I see beings come in with them and help, and I'm just holding space and communicating and making sure everything is in alignment on all the different dimensional spaces. But she said one of the things that their friend who has been head of an ER hospital, major ER hospital for years, says they don't talk about it. They tell the nurses and doctors who are there to not talk about it, but go home and write in your journals for future generations. So with that being said, comes in the future generations part, where I know all of us, star seeds, whatever we understand ourselves to be, light transmissions, all of that, I know I'm a bridge. I know that I'm a bridge to a bridge. I know I'm a bridge from both sides to communicate. I know that this is not in the least bit all that there is. And I realize that my job is to keep my heart open, my energy as clear as I possibly can, and to listen to my guidance system. I'm very clear I have a Pleiadian, deeply connected to the Pleiadian agenda. I do have every planet in Aquarius, neither here nor there, but it's a big messenger deal in the astrological world, if we use that modality for referencing things. And I know it's squared by Neptune, which would also be accountable to following your journey, the soul's journey. With all of that said, I did speak to someone a day or so ago whose husband had just taken his own life, and he had been having psychic breaks for about 6 years. And that's a story for another time, but it was a fascinating experience because I had firsthand experience with someone who had severe psychic breaks all during the COVID pandemic, and was in the house with this person. And I learned a whole lot about that over a 3 or 4 year period, and was able to access this person 2 days ago whose husband had just taken his own life after 6 years of psychic breaks. And if I had not gone through what I'd been through with this other person, which was, I've never understood why I had to go through that. If I had not gone through that, I would not have been able to access what he was saying and understand it so potently that she immediately experienced healing. immediately experienced it. And when she was hesitant in other areas, I was able to see what he was saying, and I was able to access how he was telling her, and he was reminding her about his job and how when he came in, what he wanted to do and what the mental illness experience was how it was supposed to unfold if he was strong enough to hold it, and that he always knew he had a get out of jail card if he had to use it, and he decided to use it. And he told me point blank that he knew he was getting into a dangerous spot, that other things were starting to be considered in his brain that would have put him into categories he was not willing to walk through on this earth plane, as in hurting other people. So he took himself out before that went any further. And he knew full well why he did it, what he was trying to achieve, and what he would have done should he keep going, if he had been able to hold to his course of what he felt his mission was on earth. And she wept like a baby, yes, 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 that's him to a T. And what he said was, I wasn't strong enough to hold it. I decided I was not taking that chance. I was not going out as a murderer. I needed to go now. I went ahead and used my card. Now, take it or leave it, but the white light in the eyes, she knew what I was talking about. He kept telling her about that also. The lady the other day, the ER doctor, the white light in the eyes. Christ looking at me, the white light coming into the eyes. I saw it in a surgeon's eyes this morning when I worked with him and his family on improving their telepathy. And what I understood for a while now is, of course, is that Christ is a Pleiadian. That's why everything got so distorted, was Christ is a messenger. I'm a messenger. You're a messenger. Those of us that are here for these particular missions, we're here as messengers. At least that's my 2 cents on it at this point in the game. I'm always wide open to learning more. Thank you for your time, your presence, and your respect. I love you more than I can ever express.